The dust of the Kandahar basin tasted of iron and grit, a fine red powder that coated everything, including the inside of Dr. Aries Thorne's mouth. She stood before the main gate of Forward Operating Base Jericho, a small, unassuming woman in practical khaki trousers and a sweat-stained linen shirt. Her graying hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and the glasses perched on her nose seemed too delicate for the harsh world around her. She looked like a misplaced librarian, not a priority-level consultant for the Department of Defense. The guard in the sandbagged watchtower tracked her with his M240B. Below, at the steel concertina wire gate, a young sergeant with a jaw full of chewing tobacco leaned against the concrete barrier. His name tag read Cole. ID. He grunted, not bothering to make eye contact. Aries presented her laminated DD civilian identification. Cole took it, glanced at it for a fraction of a second, and handed it back with a smirk. Logistics analyst from the Pentagon. He said like it was a terminal disease. You don't have an escort, ma'am. My orders state I'm to report directly to the TOC upon arrival. Aries said, her voice calm and even. Colonel Madsen is expecting me. The colonel's a busy man, Cole drawled. He's running a war, not a book club. You wait here. He gestured toward a metal bench baking under the relentless sun. Could be 10 minutes, could be 2 hours. Aries didn't move. Sergeant, my clearance is level 5. Top secret/SCI. My orders have a triple alpha priority cipher attached. You are required to scan my credentials and verify them against the Jade system, at which point you will be instructed to grant me immediate unescorted access. Cole finally looked at her. He saw a woman in her late 40s, soft around the edges, with hands that had never held a rifle. He saw a bureaucrat. Ma'am, I know the rules. Priority ciphers are for generals and spooks, not for people who analyze supply chains. The system's probably just bugged. Now, please step over to the waiting area. The condescension was thick and syrupy. She had heard it in different accents, in different uniforms for over 2 decades. It never changed. Sergeant, she said, her voice dropping a fraction of a degree. Your name is Cole. You're 22 years old from Omaha, Nebraska. You have 17 months in country. You scored expert on your last rifle qualification, but your squad leader noted a tendency toward overconfidence that has on 2 separate occasions nearly compromised your fire team's position. You are to scan my ID now. Cole's jaw stopped moving. The smirk vanished. For a moment, he wavered. Then his pride reasserted itself. That's it, he snapped. You want to play games? Fine. You can wait. I'm not checking anything until I get a direct order from the TOC. He turned his back on her and spat a stream of brown juice onto the dust. Aries Thorne stood perfectly still. She simply reached into her worn leather satchel, pulled out a small satellite phone, and pressed a single button, held it for 3 seconds, and ended the transmission. Then she put the phone away and waited, her eyes fixed on the distant jagged peaks of the Hindu Kush. Less than 90 seconds later, the gate's internal comm system crackled to life with a sound so loud and furious it made Cole jump. Gate 1, this is Colonel Madsen. What in the goddamn hell is going on out there? I just got a call from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs himself. He wants to know why I'm detaining a Priority 1 asset. Cole's face went pale. Sir, there's a civilian here, a logistics analyst. Is her name Dr. Thorne? Yes, sir. Then you open that gate. You render a salute and you pray to whatever God you believe in that she doesn't file a report on your insubordination. Do you understand me, Sergeant? Sir, yes, sir. Cole turned to Aries, his face horrified. He snapped to attention, his salute clumsy and panicked. Aries simply walked past him. She didn't acknowledge him. To her, he had already ceased to exist. The Tactical Operations Center of FOB Jericho was a cavern of cold air and low humming. A dozen operators sat at tiered consoles, their faces illuminated by tactical displays. Colonel Madsen stood in the center, a bulldog of a man radiating controlled fury. He turned as Aries entered, his eyes sweeping over her with open disapproval. Dr. Thorne, he said, his voice clipped. Welcome to Jericho. I apologize for the confusion at the gate. The apology was devoid of sincerity. It was handled, Colonel, Aries replied, already scanning the consoles. I'll be frank, Madsen continued. I read your file. Logistics, predictive analysis, resource allocation. Very impressive, I'm sure. But I have a fully staffed G4 section. My people know this AO. We have a critical operation spinning up in the next 24 hours. Frankly, Doctor, I don't have the time or resources to babysit a civilian analyst from DC. The message was clear. She was a burden, a distraction. I understand your position, Colonel, Ares said. I'm here to observe and provide support as directed by the Joint Staff. I require a console with access to the SIPnet and the base's internal sensor grid. Madsen gestured dismissively to a small, isolated console in the darkest corner. There. Stay out of the main comms loop. Feed any observations through Major Evans. Ares nodded and walked to the console. She sat down and powered it on. The operators went back to their work. She was already being forgotten. For the next hour, Ares worked in silence. She wasn't just logging in. She was probing the system, mapping its architecture, feeling its rhythms. She found the vulnerabilities. The base's network was a fortress, but like any fortress, it had cracks. She pulled up schematics for the power distribution network, the communications array, the old decommissioned analog phone lines that snaked beneath the base's foundations. A relic everyone had forgotten. She traced their paths, committed them to memory, and closed the files. The first sign of trouble was a flicker. On the main tactical display, the drone feed from a predator circling above the Tangi Valley blinked out. Sir, I've lost video link with Reaper 7, one of the drone operators announced. Before anyone could process it, a second screen went dark. Then a third. A cascade of failures swept through the TOC. Alarms began to blare. Red warning icons bloomed across every monitor. What's happening? Madsen barked. Comm status. Sir, I've lost all satellite uplinks. Primary and secondary channels are down. We're cut off. Switch to terrestrial comms. Get me Spectre team. Spectre, his elite recon unit, was out with a high-value convoy transporting captured enemy guidance systems deep in the Tangi Valley. Negative, sir. All channels are jammed. The lights flickered violently, then dimmed to half strength as emergency generators kicked in. The main tactical map dissolved into a pixelated mess, then went completely black. They were blind. They were deaf. Perimeter defense, Madsen roared. Report. Sir, the automated turrets are offline. The sensor grid is down. It's a coordinated attack, sir. It's cyber-physical. Then a single fragmented transmission punched through the static. Spectre 1, ambush. Tangi Pass, heavy contact. RPGs. We are pinned down. The transmission died. The silence that followed was terrifying. Spectre team was trapped, and the TOC was a tomb. They knew, sir, Major Evans said. They knew the convoy's route, and they knew our vulnerabilities. Madsen slammed his fist on the console. Get it back online. Give me my team. But his operators could do nothing. Amidst the chaos, one corner remained calm. Dr. Ares Thorne had not moved. When the screens had gone dark, she had simply unplugged her console from the primary network. From her satchel, she produced a tangle of wires and alligator clips. While Madsen was screaming orders, she was on her knees prying open a floor panel that hadn't been touched in 20 years. She found the old analog telephone trunk line. She clipped her interface onto the raw copper wires and plugged her console directly into the forgotten skeleton of the base. Her screen flickered to life with a simple text-based command prompt. It was archaic, slow, and unforgiving. But it was clean. It was secure. It was hers. First, power. She wrote a script sending low-voltage pulses through the copper line, mimicking analog command signals. Deep in the base's bowels, heavy relays slammed shut with a deafening clang. The lights in the TOC returned to full brightness that a stunned silence fell. Madsen looked around, bewildered. What was that? Ares ignored them. She was already on to communications. The radio spectrum was jammed, but the satellites above were still orbiting. The attackers had locked the transceivers, but they hadn't blinded the satellites themselves. She rerouted power to a decommissioned radio mast, a purely mechanical relic immune to the digital attack. Using her primitive connection, she uploaded a tiny data packet to an older network of satellites, a network she had helped design years ago. A network for which she still held the master key. Point 1 satellite answered. Connection established. Awaiting command. She began to type, her rhythm steady and unbroken. She tasked the satellite, repositioning its thermal imaging array over the Tangi Valley. Raw data streamed down as lines of hexadecimal code. To anyone else, gibberish. To Ares, a language. She saw Spectre Team's disabled vehicles. She saw the cluster of pinned-down operators. And she saw the enemy signatures in an L-shaped ambush. 12 of them, 2 with RPGs on the ridge. She had sight, but she still had no voice. She needed a way to talk to them. She scanned the jammed spectrum, looking for a hole in it. She found one, a narrow, fluctuating frequency band. Too unstable for voice, but enough for data. She wrote a microburst transmission protocol. Major Evans walked over, watching her screen. "Doctor, what are you doing?" "Re-establishing command and control, Major." On the dead main screen, a single line of green text suddenly appeared. "Spectre 1. This is Jericho Tosi. Do you read? Stand by for data." The entire room froze. Madsen took 2 steps forward, his mouth agape. "How?" Ares ignored him. She began transmitting thermal data. "Spectre 1, acknowledge. Enemy positions follow. Hostile 1 at your 10 o'clock, 50 meters. Hostile 2 at your 11 o'clock, 70 meters elevated. 2-man RPG team on ridge, your 2 o'clock, 300 meters." A moment later, "Jericho, this is Spectre 1. Solid copy. How the hell are you doing this?" Madsen stared at Ares. "Who are you?" Ares finished typing, then turned to look at him. Her eyes were calm and clear. "I'm a logistics analyst, Colonel. I analyze the flow of resources. Your most critical resource right now is information. I am restoring the flow." Before Madsen could respond, the main communications panel suddenly blared with a Priority 1 override signal. The largest screen flickered and resolved into a secure video conference window. 0.54-star generals appeared. In the center was General Vance, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The entire room snapped to attention. Vance's eyes scanned the Tosi and settled on the small woman in the corner. "Oracle status report," Vance said. "Is Jericho's Veil protocol active?" The name hung in the air, electric and heavy. Oracle. A wave of shock rippled through the room. Everyone at a certain command level knew that name. Oracle was a legend, the architect of the entire global strategic defense network. The system, nicknamed the Veil, Oracle had designed its deepest fail-safes, its most secret backdoors. The figure was spoken of in mythical terms. The official story was that Oracle had retired almost a decade ago, vanishing into civilian life. And General Vance had just called Dr. Ares Thorn Oracle. Ares turned back to her console and keyed her microphone. "General, this is Oracle. Acknowledged." The attack penetrated the Veil's outer layers. "The Jericho network is compromised and quarantined. I have activated a tertiary failsafe protocol. I am currently running command and control through an isolated analog system. Spectre Team is pinned down in the Tangi Pass, but I have established a microburst data link and am providing tactical oversight." The generals listened, their expressions grim but attentive. They were not talking to a subordinate. "What do you need from us, Oracle?" Vance asked. "I need you to blind them," Ares said. "The attackers are using a compromised Russian comm satellite, Cosmos 2479, to coordinate their attack. I'm sending you the exploit code now. Use your assets at Fort Meade to execute it. It will disable the satellite's primary transponder for precisely 12 minutes. That will be my window. Consider it done," Vance said. "Stand by, Oracle." The generals turned to their aides, barking orders. Colonel Madsen stood frozen. He had dismissed her. He had insulted her. He had relegated the single most important strategic asset on the continent to a dusty corner. The atmosphere in the TOC had undergone a profound change. The smirks of the Spectre operators had been replaced by awe. They were watching a living myth at work. Madsen slowly walked over to the main command chair and tapped the officer sitting there on the shoulder. The man scrambled out as if it were on fire. Madsen turned to Ares. His voice was quiet, stripped of all arrogance. "The floor is yours, ma'am." Ares gave a slight nod. She moved from the cramped console to the main command chair. She plugged her custom interface into the main console, and the large dead screens flickered to life. The entire TOC was now her instrument. "Spectre 1, she said, her voice now broadcast with perfect clarity. "This is Oracle. The enemy's command and control will be going dark in approximately 90 seconds. On my mark, you will execute a fighting withdrawal to the west toward the secondary extraction point. I am tasking an armed drone to that location. I will be guiding its munitions manually. Acknowledged, Oracle. We've never been so happy to hear a voice in our lives." standing by for your mark. Ares's hands moved with grace and speed. She was a conductor orchestrating a symphony of violence. On one screen, she monitored the countdown. On another, she wrote firing solutions for a Reaper drone flying blind, inputting commands manually based on thermal data. On a third, she mapped the safest path for Spectre's retreat. General Vance, she said, the exploit is uploaded. Execute now. Executing. Far above the Earth, a string of code shot from Maryland leaped to a satellite and beamed across the globe to Cosmos 2479. The Russian satellite hiccuped. Its transponder went dead on the ground. The effect was instantaneous. The enemy fighters were suddenly deaf. Their commanders could no longer see the battlefield. Confusion rippled through their ranks. Mark, Ares said. Spectre, execute. Go now. In the valley, Spectre team erupted into action. RPG team on the ridge is repositioning, Ares announced. They're trying to get a clear shot. Reaper is in position. Firing solution locked. Danger close. Spectre, get your heads down. She pressed enter. Half a world away, a Hellfire missile dropped from the wing of a drone. In the TOC, two bright heat signatures on the ridge vanished, replaced by a much larger expanding bloom of energy. Good hit, Oracle. Good hit. Jesus Christ. For the next 12 minutes, Ares Thorn dismantled the ambush with surgical precision. She guided Spectre team through the terrain, calling out enemy positions before they could fire. She used the Reaper to eliminate threats, her commands so fast and accurate it was as if she were controlling it with her mind. The enemy, blinded and disorganized, fell into disarray. The 12 minutes ended. The Russian satellite came back online, but it was too late. The battle was over. Spectre 1 to Oracle. We are at the secondary extraction point. We are secure. All personnel accounted for. The asset is safe. Solid copy, Spectre, Ares replied. Sit tight. A quick reaction force is on its way. She turned to Madsen. Colonel, my work here is done. Your primary systems should be back online within the hour. The enemy has been routed. I suggest you get your QRF in the air. She began to quietly unplug her equipment. Her part in the drama finished. Madsen nodded slowly and began barking orders. His voice was different now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by sober, focused authority. He had been humbled, and in that humility, he had become a better leader. The sun was beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and soft orange. The long night was over. The command center was now quiet. The operators, exhausted but alive with adrenaline, were logging after-action reports. The 5 generals had signed off with a simple, profound, "Thank you, Oracle." The members of Spectre team, safely back on base, walked through the TOC. They stopped near Ares's console, each of the hardened operators meeting her gaze and giving a slow, deliberate nod of respect. It was a gesture more meaningful than any medal. Ares Thorn sat alone at her corner console. She had declined the offer of the command chair, preferring her own quiet space. She was meticulously cleaning her glasses with a small microfiber cloth. The chaos, the battle, the revelation, all of it had been processed and filed away. She had saved the base. She had saved the convoy. She had saved dozens of lives. She had revealed herself to be one of the most important strategic figures in the modern military. And now she was just a woman cleaning her glasses. Colonel Madsen approached, moving quietly. He held 2 heavy ceramic mugs. He placed one on the console beside her, filled with fresh black coffee that he stood there for a long moment, searching for the right words. Apology, gratitude, awe, they all felt inadequate. He had misjudged her so completely that any attempt to explain would only sound pathetic. He had seen a librarian and ignored the mind of a grandmaster. In the end, he said nothing. Words were insufficient. He just looked at her, his expression conveying a depth of respect that was absolute and unconditional. Ares picked up the mug, her small hand wrapping around its warmth. She looked up at him and gave him that same small nod she had given him before. It was an acceptance of his new understanding. The transaction was complete. Respect had been earned and paid in full. She put on her glasses, her vision once again sharp and clear. She turned her gaze back to the screen, displaying a logistical schematic of supply routes for the entire theater of operations. She took a slow sip of the coffee. The enemy had been defeated in this battle, but the war, The endless, complex war of systems and resources continued, and her work was never done. The quiet logistician was back on duty.